Hello and welcome to another video, and in this one we're going to look at how to read in large JSON files effectively. And so instead of using the traditional HTTP request, we're going to use a more modern way to make network requests and handle responses, and that is by using the Fetch API to retrieve a JSON file. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and make a new file called just gonna call it fetch.html. We're gonna do our classic, HTML setup, doc type HTML, which this you guys should be all familiar with by now. We got that. Then we're gonna go ahead and make the head, and then we're gonna make a title. We're gonna call it fetching a file, and then after head we got our body script. All right. So first, we're gonna begin by making a function to start the program. Um, you know, after fetching the JSON file. Um, so yeah, let's begin by making a function. It's gonna be called start program, and the parameter is gonna be JSON, which is the parse JSON object fetch from the file. This part will make more sense once we get down in the lower section of the code. But yeah, I'm just gonna go in like the order from top to down, so I'm not like moving around too much. So easier for you guys to follow. So what we do is, we get the parse JSON object fetched from the file. Then we log the JSON object to the console for debugging or, you know, other process. But once we got that, so the key thing to note here is that we're going to be using promises to fetch a JSON file. Promises are a modern way to handle asynchronous code without blocking execution. Um, so the code that we're going to type in, it'll demonstrate how to fetch a file and process it using promises. So first, we're going to make a console.log actually, and we're going to say before fetch. And this will log a message before starting the fetch operation. All right. So now we're going to do fetch, and then we're going to pass. So we're going to fetch the JSON file, which we're going to make in a second, and it's going to be located um, at dot slash stuff dot JSON. Yep. Okay. Then we're gonna use the then. Yeah, we're gonna use then. Which is this line. We're gonna parse the response as JSON. So response arrow response dot JSON. There you go. So the dot then is a method that chains callbacks to handle the response and parse it as a JSON. So that's what we're doing right here. Uh, so in this with this line, it says dot misspelled it. Then JSON, have it point to the start program JSON. So this line is passing the parse JSON to the start program function. So now that that's done, we're gonna go ahead and do a console.log, and it's gonna be called after fetch. That's what we're gonna. So this is the message we're gonna log after initiating the fetch operation. Um, so the fetch operation is asynchronous. So after this, after the after fetch here is logged before the JSON is processed. So that's something to keep in mind. So next, we're going to be using a async, oh wait, or to fetch a JSON file. This async provides a simpler way, like syntax first handling the asynchronous code. But then it pauses execution at each await statement. So we're going to be using two await statements. And this will make the code easier to read, but synchronous in behavior. So yeah, this will be our function to fetch and process the JSON file. So we're going to do async function get JSON, and then we're going to do a console.log here first. And we're going to log a message before starting the fetch operation. Before, oh wait. And then we're going to fetch the JSON file and wait for the response. So we're going to do let response equal await fetch. We're going to call the fetch function the fetch, and then we're going to pass in stuff.json. It's going to be what the name of our file is. So this will fetch a JSON file and wait for the response. And then next, we're going to do let JSON equals await response dot JSON, and this will parse the response as JSON and wait for the result. And then we're going to call the start program function, and this will pass the parse JSON to the start program function. And then finally, we'll console.log, and then we're going to say after await. Alright, so one last thing is to call our getJSON function. We're going to call the asynchronous function to fetch and process the JSON file. So to kind of recap real quick, the start program function is called after the JSON file is fetched and parsed, and it logs JSON objects to the console, which we can replace later for that deals with logic, just to show as like a dummy example. Um, next we're using promises. Um, the fetch function is used to retrieve the JSON file. The dot then method changes the callbacks to handle the response and parse it as JSON. Promises allow non-blocking execution. So the after fetch is logged before the JSON is processed, and then for our async is for to make a asynchronous function, and the await keyword that we use right here pauses execution until the fetch and response.json options are complete. This approach makes the code easier to read and understand, but introduces synchronous behavior at each wait. So yeah, now let's go ahead and make our JSON file. We're gonna call it stuff.json. And what we're gonna do in this, we're gonna so we're gonna make a JSON object that contains a single key value pair. So we're gonna call it name, and it's gonna be equal to awesome. So name is the key, and awesome is its value. And this is just like a placeholder, just to show as an example. So let's go ahead and run um, our file. Obviously, nothing is going to show here, but then we're going to have to right click and go to inspect, and the console. I misspelled something, line 34. So let's go to our fetch file. Um, and click line 34. Oh, okay. I guess all right. Hopefully that fixes it. and as you can see, we have our before fetch, um, which we print, which we log, right before we do the fetch, right before we fetch the JSON file. That's what this is, and then we do the after fetch, um, after initiating the fetch operation. Then this before wait, we call it before starting the fetch operation inside the once the JSON get JSON function is called. And then here you can see we have our um, JSON object that contains the key value pair of name, key, and then value awesome. And then finally we have after wait, which is the message logged after processing the JSON. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope this helps you guys out in parsing large JSON files. Thank you.